It's Monday. It's Shane, and this is the Night Owls Monday Madness.
I'm JP.
I'm Shane. So,
Like you said earlier.
I did to say it again. I really like myself. I got to say it twice.
All right. Positive thoughts.
Yes, positive thoughts. It's positive affirmations is what you have to do to make yourself feel better. Mm-hmm. So when you're down, just tell yourself you're awesome.
Like Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live.
Exactly. I like Stuart Smalley, by the way. I'm a big...
The one where you had Michael Jordan. Did you ever see that one? Mm-mm. The episode where Michael Jordan was like down on himself or something, and like he's just like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. All right. So we're just going to talk the state of disc golf. So JP and I both have started to hear some things from wholesalers, podcasts, retailers, on and on about the state of disc golf. And we're going to talk more, I guess, percentages and numbers for business, right?
Yeah.
I guess we'll talk about it this way and what our speculations are and where we think it's going to go. So a little bit of forecasting. So it's not going to be the fun random Monday that we normally have, but I think we can still probably make it fun.
Sure.
Because it's going to be nonsense because it's not going to mean anything, but it means something to us, darn it. And I think people like it.
Yeah.
Another little Stuart Smalley there. Okay, here we go. So I feel that the industry of and the state of disc golf currently at this point is on a downward trajectory. And the reason why I say that is discs are back in full production for the most part. There's no lacking in production. And aside from a few hot brands and hot discs, you're not seeing discs move as quickly as they used to. Mm-hmm. I think the hype of the people that came in, COVID golfers, is starting to die off a little bit because all the other things they used to do are coming back to normalities. So clubs are opening back up, whatever it may be. I think that frickin' pickleball is killing us right now. No, I think these niche sports like pickleball and things like that, they're starting to pick up more traction. And pickleball is the number one fastest growing sport in the world, and it has been for about 8 months. Mm-hmm. So pretty impressive. And at a point, disc golf was that sport. And that was during COVID time, pandemic time. And that is a huge bug, whatever it is, because I keep seeing the shadow fly by. And so I'm kind of going, I'm just going to verbally vomit all this information out here. And then I also feel that retailers have purchased enough stock that wholesalers are starting to see the crunch now. So the production has ramped up for wholesalers, and they're on this trajectory to fill the demand that is no longer there because our shelves are full now, where they weren't prior to maybe 6 months ago, I would say, across the board, because you just couldn't get discs. It was hard. You just took what you could. And now we're to a point where we can pick and choose what we want rather than just say, send me some stuff. Whatever you have, let's get it on the shelf. So I think the manufacturing is ramping up and to a point where they're trying to meet an expectation. Manufacturers are trying to meet this expectation that was set by the past 2 years, which doesn't exist anymore. Mm. I don't think there's anything else in my mind. So, and this all predicates on stuff that we heard, and you can talk about the stuff that you heard about manufacturers.
Well, I don't know if it was manufacturers, but Jonathan Gomez in the Smashbox interview that he and Jess Spring had alluded to, he had talked to multiple companies that had to lay off about 50% of their workforce. Mm-hmm. And, no names were given, so we don't know if that's media companies, manufacturers, whoever it may be. But that's a pretty telling sign of where disc golf is kind of headed. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe just that, obviously, maybe we've come down since COVID, and we're already kind of plateauing. We're in a holding pattern. and then we'll see, by the end of the year or end of the tour, how much further, if we go down or if we continue to stay here. Another thing that you look at is the PDGA. We've just, what was it, 250,000 members?
Yep.
So we crossed that plateau, but that's not concurrent.
Right.
Right? So there's reason to believe that we're probably sitting at 100,000 or so, maybe just over that concurrent or current, active members.
Active members, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's still pretty good. I mean, it's just under half. And maybe people were like, well, I'll sign up and get my number. And then they've just figured out, tournament life isn't what they want, lost interest in the sport, financially doesn't make sense for them to be paying $50 a month and not getting anything out of it, that they thought they would,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's in a strange time. And like you said, I think people are probably throwing more money at things that they used to because it's coming back. Or I don't want to say that disc golf was a stopgap at times, but it could have been.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was for some, because you think of the individuals that who have traditionally been disc golfers. Now, I know that's a wide gamut. I'm very, very much stereotyping disc golfers. But disc golfers were never the premier athletes. They were never, so forth and so
True.
on. So there is a stereotype of a disc golfer. Now, I'm not talking like the negative stereotype that people think about, but there is this, like weekend warriors. They go out and they play tournaments, and it is a sport that you can go out and be competitive only playing weekends. That's fine. When you get into, some of the people that came into the sport, they were people they were team sports that they couldn't play anymore, and they were looking to fill a gap. So I think that is true. I think there's some truth there. And as their team sports are coming back to, back into the running, everything's going, they're kind of losing the passion because their priorities are going back into these sports. I think that's for the younger population. Some of the older population, who knows what it is, But I think there's a lot of reasons to it. But when really the only thing you could do was go outside and be away from people, how many sports are there that you can do that with?
Right. Very few.
Yeah, there's like hunting, skiing, biking, swimming. And even swimming, it has to be outdoors. You can't go inside. Disc golf, and there were things like that. Pickleball, tennis, all those things. You're touching balls. That's weird to say.
Yeah.
You're touching common equipment. How about that?
Right. Yeah.
So you weren't allowed. Those things just weren't in favor. They were faux pas. Disc golf wasn't.
Yeah.
So I think you are finding that people are just kind of falling out of it a little bit. I think that's where the importance of us as disc golfers and keeping people in it and excited and doing new fun events and keeping things consistent so they can continue to come back is going to help. I don't know. I hate to say it, but I do see it as either a hard plateau or even maybe slightly decrease.
Yeah. I think so. We just had a big tournament in our area. One thing I think the next thing, someone in the Green Bay area disc golf group that's on Facebook, I think is trying to run a trilogy challenge, is what I had seen. And that's a great way to get people to get new discs, try out disc golf that way. I think if there's more varied tournaments, like having doubles tournaments, having that trilogy challenge, or par two? Is that what Prodigy is? And
Prodigy,
I think MVP even has something. As long as there's
Space Race or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think if you can have varied types of tournaments at different types of courses to keep it fresh, like keep disc golf fresh, that can go a long way in helping prolong the sport in your area.
I think that's a good point, because I think we look at disc golf as a professional thing, a professional side of disc golf, a very, appropriate, a very I'm trying to think. You hear it all the time. Keep it professional, keep it professional, keep it professional. And I think there's a place for that. I really, truly do. But I also think there's a place for the bar league.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a place for having the casual rounds where you're drinking with buddies, harassing each other, and having fun. And I think there can be, like the horseshoe leagues and the dart leagues, and there could be the same thing with the disc golf leagues.
That's like us with our podcast.
Exactly.
There's Smashbox, Nick and Matt, whoever it is.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of the other guys.
Exactly.
You know, that kind of thing. I don't know. But.
Well, no, and you're right. I mean, it's the stuff where, like, we have honestly absolutely no clue or no statistical backing behind what we talk about. We're talking from the seat of our pants, and we're just having fun with it. We're enjoying what we're doing. And in honesty, no offense to you listeners out there, I don't care what you think. I mean, for the most part, like, as long as I'm not truly offending anybody, I don't think you or I or Ben, for that matter, really care what you guys think. We're just having fun talking and discussing disc golf. And, obviously we do care what you think as far as, like,
I mean, we hear from people. Like, people
having banter and discourse.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's appropriate, but I don't think that's going to stop us from saying something we want to say. Right. And I think that's the same thing. Like, if you want to go out and have a beer, you can have a beer while you're throwing, or you can have a beer in a bar.
Right.
Like, why not have it while you're throwing?
It's cheaper too.
Exactly. As long as you take that can off the course with you and you're not driving home drunk, awesome. Go for it, man. Like, I think there's a perfect place for that. And I think some of those doubles and singles and, these random leagues and all that stuff, like, I think it's a great place for that stuff. And I think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And I think there's also very appropriate for, kids and educational functions. And I think it's very appropriate for professional and, like, but you got to know your crowd.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, and I think that'll help with the growth and keeping it top of mind for people. Make it fun.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to be stuffing professional.
True.
Like, get out there and throw some plastic, throw stuff at stuff,
Yeah. Right. But speaking of, they haven't been on in a long time.
I know, man. I'm like, that was one of my favorite podcasts. Every time I see it, I'm like, yes. And then, like, they just disappear again.
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is, if they're just super busy, but it's like they'd come back and be like, okay, we're back for like 2 episodes, and now they've been gone for over a month now.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's kind of crazy. Yeah, even media wise, like we alluded to with Joe Mez, their views are down,
right,
compared to what they were. Like, Patreon's down. I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's not just them either. I'm sure it's many people.
Right.
Being like, okay, I was supporting this at the time. Now I'm going to allocate that money to something else that I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard to, in the summer, when you're getting back into these outdoor activities, or maybe you have kids and your kids are super in leagues and other things, and you have to be like, oh, I got to pay this much money to go drive my kid to this game, or they need this kind of equipment. And then, it's just hard to sit down in the summer and watch. Like, right. I didn't get to watch barely watched any of the Jonesboro this past weekend, because we were just so busy doing stuff. Like, stuff's ramping up.
Yep.
And that's hard. And even like with us as a podcast, we take a look at our numbers and like see where we're at and all that. It's like, it fluctuates up and down, and when we release a new episode, it's really up because it's new and fresh, and then goes up and down and everything. And so that's really hard to come to grips with sometimes.
Well, exactly. Yeah. When we look at how the numbers flow, I mean, we understand the excitement of when we first started playing or doing these episodes, and then we see the dips, and then we see the peaks, and then we see the dips, and then we see the peaks. And we understand that life happens, but it is hard to dedicate time to something. I mean, it's just like running league. Like, we'll take it off the podcast and we'll say it's like running league, It's, it can be burdensome if you take it as burdensome. But what it is that's just a responsibility or a task that needs to be fulfilled. And I love it. I really enjoy it, but you have to be there every week, Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that it takes dedication, and there's so many other things in the season of life that people have to account for, that sometimes it's just hard for people to put that time aside. And, to be defeated when there's only 4 people that show up to league, or to be super excited when there's 30 people that show up to league, or however many it is, I think those are the ebbs and flows. The same thing with the listens. Like, when we get, X number of listens compared to this number of listens, like, it's just those ebbs and flows that we have. But hopefully we don't see that consistent downward trail, with everything disc golf.
Right.
And I think the only way we can do it is that keeping that excitement. But for some reason, I just feel in the realm of disc golf, it just feels like that excitement has waned a bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's becoming more of a spectator sport. I mean, honestly, because you think about the amount of people that play football. Very few people play football, realistically. I mean,
Right.
you think about the number of people that watch it compared to the number of people that play it. Like, very few people play football.
Right.
You know, and that's why you don't have a football store. You know, it's the same thing. Like, very few people, well, it's the most popular sport in the world, but still statistically, very few people play soccer or football. That's why they don't have soccer stores. I mean, some places do.
There are.
Yeah.
I've been to a few here and there.
Yeah. But, you know, it's fewer and far between.
Yeah,
And
it is.
I think we saw this explosion. So we talk about retailers. We see this explosion of disc golf shops. Everybody wants to do a disc golf shop. But there is a reality that has to be checked. Like, you got to know it's a true business transaction now, because it's not this diamond in the rough or this gem. Like, everybody knows the local disc golf shop. Now you have choices. And now it's so easy, especially for internet. So you got to be a little smarter about how you approach those things. Because if you just open up a shop and you don't put the time and effort into building the community, it's not going to last. It's not going to, you know, in my humble opinion, it's not going to last, because there's other choices out there now. Before, there were no other choices. So you could be a pretty subpar human being, or maybe an above par human being, you know, and run a pretty poor business and still make it because you were the only game in town.
Yeah.
Now it's just not the case anymore. you
True.
know?
There's also that risk too of being so many that like you're taking in all this inventory, and then all of a sudden you're going through it, but you're like, okay, I have to buy more discs. How do I stay afloat? How do I
Yes.
manage that? Or you're bringing in employees because you're so busy, and then you're
Yep.
like, well, now I can't afford to be open, and
Yep.
cutting back hours, whatever it is. The other thing I was thinking of too with the state of disc golf is sponsorships. We always, we're always talking about being more professionals so we can get the biggest sponsorship possible. We're like, oh, we want Pepsi, we want Coke, whatever it is. It's like we sometimes just need to embrace that. I don't want to say we're like a hippie sport, but like what kind of sport we actually are. Like, yeah, the pro tour is like aiming to be more professional, but then you have the amateur sport, and we got to meet somewhere in the middle where it's like we can aim for big sponsors, but maybe we aim for a lot of mid-tier level sponsors so we can get that base money, and then like those big tier sponsors take notice. They're like, oh, our competitor who's maybe a little smaller is starting to do this, so we like, throw...
Yeah, we need to flood that market and get them out of it or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And obviously we had Barbasol come in and I don't know, Johnsonville.
Yeah.
I mean...
Where'd they go?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing. Like, because they used to be on the koozies, on the cans, on the bottom. It's like, I don't know what happened to that.
Yeah. Well,
So-
they outlived it, and they obviously didn't see worth in it, so they didn't up it.
Yeah,
You know?
and I think that's part of it. Is like, you're not going to go in the store and be like, yeah, I'm a disc golfer, I'm buying Johnsonville. Like, they don't.
No.
And like, there's no. It's hard to say because to them you're just a consumer. Like,
Right.
you're not telling me that, oh, because we advertised with disc golf, we saw an increase this much. Who
Right.
knows? Because that marketing's not probably outweighing the amount of people from disc golf that are buying their brats.
Well, and a company that large, a niche sport that is disc golf, is not going to move their needle one way or the other. So they are not going to see the increase in sales that's going to justify the amount of money they're going to spend.
Right.
Just bar none, because it's truly just, I mean, the amount of, why am I blanking on the word for it? But basically the fluctuation from, there's a certain level of fluctuation that you don't even think about. Like if there's a 2 or 3 to 4%, roller coaster that you're riding, you don't even think about it. There's no like, oh, this is awesome or this is bad. It is what it is. That can just happen because the wind blew the wrong way or the rain, fell on a wrong day. But when you start seeing that needle get up to that 10% or down to that 10%, then you start worrying about it. And disc golf doesn't have the ability to move it outside of that normal fluctuation.
Yeah.
So I don't think these larger companies are going to latch onto something like this unless, like, who was it that has the insider the handheld, the Edge Bushnell.
Yeah.
The only reason Bushnell is all in on the sport is because the people that are pushing it are disc golfers.
Right.
So you got to have those people inside the sport on those larger companies to make that needle actually move, you know? Yeah, so I think that's a good point as well. When we look at the mid-level or the mid-tier sponsors, like, why don't we embrace the CBD companies?
That's what I was thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a very weird thing that Dynamic Discs in their polls asked us, how do you feel about CBD and selling CBD in your shop? But in the same regard, like, that's our demographic.
Sure.
That's who we're targeting, you know? It may be unpopular to say that, but for a over-the-counter legal, you know, thing in all 50 states, like, why not?
Yeah.
You know, why not?
Well, even this past weekend, whole sponsors. Do you know how many breweries there were for whole
Ton of
sponsors?
breweries.
Bars, local, like the local sponsors were bars, breweries. Foundation had at least 2 holes that they had sponsored.
Right.
And there was a couple other things.
Right.
But I was just like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think that's because that's who they're going to hit. Like, I can look at a brewery and say, there's going to be some people that are going to come in because of that.
Sure.
So this $25 or $50 that you're going to spend for this whole sponsorship, $25 I think is what they were selling.
Yeah.
What they were. That $25 you're going to spend, you're going to make that back in 2 beers.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm probably not 2 beers, but
But-
you know, you're going to make that back. And then when disc golfers think about these breweries, like when they're standing in front of their IPA wall or whatever it is, like they're going to grab something. So I get it. I mean, I think those are the things that we should go after. And is it in Vegas that they have the Discs and Brews or something like that? The big tournament where it's like there's a big micro brew competition.
Oh, I didn't know
and a disc
that.
golf tournament at the same
That's
time.
cool.
It's pretty cool. Maybe it's in Denver. I don't remember where it is. Someone shouted us out if you know what it is. I have a disc down. It's a Rhino downstairs that has the logo on it. I just don't remember what it is. But yeah, so state of disc golf. I hope it's not on a downward trajectory. I mean, our numbers as far as the shop goes aren't showing that at all. But I've heard a lot of other disc golf retailers talk about how down they are.
Sure. And I think the one thing, like we were just talking about, I think before we got on here, is as long as companies, like we were talking about MVP with like their OTB, like doing the different waves. Obviously, Ledgestone has Discraft, they do their waves. If you're coming out with something new that's on like new plastic on a disc, or you know something that grabs people's attention, it's gonna sell. Like the Lozado, obviously that sold because it was on Simon. You know, that's a signature disc. That's Simon. The new glitches that came out, you know, with the Eclipse rim, you know, that was something super, you know, they hadn't had before, so that was going to sell, you know, along with these other discs. So I think as long as they're pushing out these specialty and rear discs, and even Castoplast with the last runs.
Yeah, the last runs. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're like that's going to help your bottom line.
Yeah. And I think doing stuff exciting and fun like that is a really good way. I mean, like Halo used to be the fun and exciting thing. Now everybody has Halo. So you buy Halo and as a shop owner and you're like, yeah, this stuff's going to move. And it just sits there along with the rest of the 75 Halo that companies make. So I remember
there's a name attached to it. If it's like a Calvin, Destroyer or something, it'll move.
Yeah, it'll move. But really, I mean, outside, and even Paul Macbeth stuff just isn't moving the same way it used to. I mean, the only one that's moving stuff presently is Simon. Simon's like, you put Simon's name on it, as soon as it pops up, it's golden. You know, and you look at Lone Star, you look at some of the like these niche brands that are kind of up and coming, and there's a hype about them. And you talk about the glitch, you talk about things like that. You know, they're still moving. They're not doing too bad. But I still I don't understand Innova, Discraft, Lad 64. They're stale. You know, they're stale. But I think it's just because people have enough, and they're not really doing much to like capture the excitement of disc golf like MVP. I mean, MVP is a huge brand, but MVP's doing they have Simon. You know, Lone Star's trying to do stuff to capture it. And I mean, they're, like you said, was it you that told me that they opened up their team applications?
Yeah.
That alone right there. I mean, how if they say have 100 more people, you know, there's 100 more, you know,
Walking billboards.
exactly that they're going to get out there, and plus they have 100 more customers. They have a, you know, I mean, like, it's brilliant. It's smart, super super smart. So I don't have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, just if you guys have anything that you think we missed or want to let us know that, you know, your thoughts on the state of disc golf right now compared to COVID or where you see it going, drop us a line on email or direct message on Instagram or wherever.
Yeah. It's throw@doordisc.com or night_owl_pod or door_disc_golf. And then doordisc.com is where we have all that stuff that we just talked about. People wanting or not wanting, it's all there on the site. And then outside of that, we have a YouTube channel. So doordisc.com or doordisc golf is the YouTube channel. Yeah, and let us know. Support your local shops. I mean, support us online, of course, but support your local shops. Like, get out there, spend some money with them, and talk to them. Tell them what you want, because the more stuff they have that you want, the easier it's going to be for them. And unfortunately, I think in the state of disc golf, I think that's going to be needed pretty soon.
Yeah.
So, not doomsdaying, just kind of looking at the writing on the wall, I guess.
Sure.
So, with that being said, I don't know. Keep it subpar. And deuces.
Peace.